Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZRJ and RJTV, channel 224 on Sky Cable. My name is Eric Lecain, and here on the Jam, we talk about what's going on in the world. What's happened this week outside of the Philippines so you can stay up to date with all the most interesting news that's out there. Now, today, we're going to be talking, of course, about the FBI raid on Trump's home in Florida, the bombing of the nuclear plant in Ukraine. What happened to Salman Rushdie, the newest virus that's coming out of China? Also some science, animal stories, weather stories, and something we haven't done in a while, the best crime stories of the week. So thank you for spending your Sunday evening here with us as we tackle the news. So let's get to the biggest story of the week. The former U.S. president's home was raided last week by the FBI. They showed up in the morning in their black SUVs, wearing black outfits, carrying black backpacks, and they showed their warrant. Proceeded to go through Trump's massive home/country club there in Florida. Now, the first question on every mind was, why are they there? Is it because of the January 6th hearing in which Trump set his mob of supporters to storm the Capitol and make him president again? Did it have anything to do with sending fake electors to throw the election into chaos? Maybe it was that quasi-shakedown in Georgia in which they're currently passing out indictments. Maybe it had to do with his shady business practices in New York, in which he recently pleaded the fifth 400 plus times during his questioning. I mean, for a while, we couldn't figure out which thing that this must be connected to. Well, it turns out when Trump left the White House, he took some things with him that didn't belong to him. Boxes and boxes of documents that belonged to the U.S. government. He just swiped them. And now as this story unfolds, well, it doesn't seem so horrible, does it? I mean, it's just some documents, right? All they have to do is ask for them back. Well, it turns out they did. They asked for them back. In May of 2021, they noticed a whole bunch of documents were missing. So they started calling Trump's lawyers and saying, hey, he wasn't supposed to take that stuff and we need it back. After some pressure in January of 2022, they got some of those documents back, but some of them were torn up, had to be taped back together. Then things started to get a bit heated. In February, the Justice Department was asked to investigate the fact that Trump refused to return many of the documents, and the ones that he did return, well, some of them were torn up. He was told multiple times, you cannot tear up these documents, but he did it anyway. So finally, the subpoenas for the missing documents all came out, but he still didn't return them. Finally, they sent several officials from the counterintelligence office down to Florida to see what's still there and to serve him the subpoena. They even saw Trump when they were there, but Trump basically ignored them. On August 8th, several teams of FBI agents raided his house in search for those documents. Trump was not there because he was giving that deposition in New York for the civil case there against him, that one where he pleaded the fifth. However, his lawyers were there watching the FBI remove the documents which belong to the U.S. government. They even broke into his safe. Once they got their 20-plus boxes of stuff, they left. This was kept secret from the media, other officials, as this is how the DOJ does it to keep the privacy of individuals intact. They never announced it. You know how we found out? Trump told us. Everyone, including the media, found out it from Trump. Now, remember, the FBI was acting on a warrant given by a judge to recover stolen property. However, Trump said his home was under siege and occupied by the FBI. He said after working and cooperating fully with the government, they did an unannounced raid which was unnecessary and inappropriate. He claimed he's being persecuted for political reasons. He said the FBI is being weaponized against him. Now, of course, the only way that a judge would give a search warrant to raid an ex-president's home, there would have to be a mountain of evidence showing that a crime had been committed. I mean, if they had gone in there not being sure if they would find evidence of a crime, then basically Trump would be famous again. So they knew ahead of time what was there and exactly where to look for it. Now, how would they know all this? How would they be so very, very sure they had Trump with basically criminal possession of government documents? Well, someone told them. Someone within Trump's own orbit might have, or probably did, give them all the info they needed for that raid. Now, of course, once this news was all out, the Trump supporters started saying the FBI is corrupt and that this was illegal, what they did. And they demanded to see that warrant. All the Republicans officials demanded that the DOJ turn over the warrant and see the list of what they took from Trump's house. Even Trump said, yes, they should release the warrant. However, we later found out Trump already had the warrant. They gave it to him on the day of the raid. He also had a list of everything that was taken. So the DOJ said, okay, we'll release it. And they did. And now we know why this was so very serious. Trump had taken secret classified documents. He also took super secret classified documents, as well as something called SCI documents, which that is the most secret things the U.S. keeps. Things like foreign agents, info on nuclear weapons, ongoing investigations, national defense information. This kind of stuff is illegal to take. And here's where we all learned about something called the Espionage Act. This is a law created for people who try to steal or destroy classified materials from the U.S. government. Trump had taken multiple documents that were labeled top secret, and it turns out some of those documents could be related, possibly, to U.S. nuclear weapons. Now, Trump said that none of this classified stuff was classified because he's the president, and when he takes it, it becomes declassified. Now, immediately, multi-legal scholars and officials came to say that that is not true in any way. The president cannot grab a box full of top secret documents on his way out the door and say, oh, it's fine because I was the president. And besides, why? Why does the president need or want to have highly classified material just sitting around his club in Florida, which has many people in it every day? Many people that he doesn't even know. Anyway, the warrant states that Trump may have violated 3 different crimes: concealment of removal of federal records, destruction or alteration of records in a federal investigation, and transmitting defense information. The worst one, of course, destroying records in a federal investigation, which carries 20 years in prison. Now, the big question is, what is in those documents that Trump removed when he left the White House? Is there information regarding nuclear weapons, North Korea, January 6th, the ongoing investigation into him? Well, we may never know that information, nor may we ever find out what Trump was planning to do with them. Maybe it was just mementos of his time as president, or maybe he's planning to use them in some way. The Espionage Act has come up before in cases with Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, also Edward Snowden, who leaked a trove of classified documents about national security agencies' surveillance programs. Also, Chelsea Manning, remember her? The Army soldier who gave a massive amount of government documents to WikiLeaks. So, is the ex-president guilty of any of these crimes? The question the DOJ will have to find out: what was Trump planning to do with these classified materials? And what was the reason he tried to destroy some of them? Could it be that Trump just didn't care? He was known for being careless, boastful about having information. He was at dinner at his country club back when he was president, talking loudly on the phone about extremely sensitive materials involving a military operation while people around him were tweeting out the words that the president was saying on the phone. Remember that time he boasted about having information from the military of Israel and how he casually gave it to the Russians while on camera? In any case, we all know where this is going. In the next coming weeks, Trump is going to become the victim. He will mostly say he never did anything wrong and this is all a conspiracy to make sure that he does not run for president. He's already conveyed through many of his supporters that maybe the FBI planted evidence in his home. Of course, his lawyers were there watching every move the FBI made. And recently, it was discovered that Trump's lawyers told the DOJ back in June that Trump no longer had any classified documents and that all those documents had been returned. Well, that turned out not to be true. But in the meantime, Trump claims to love law enforcement. However, now he is bashing the FBI at every turn, claiming they are political and what they did was illegal. But on the flip side of this, even if he ends up not being able to, if they end up not being able to nail Trump on any of these charges against him, if he's able to, slip out from in front of this giant train like he's done in the past, this might actually help him in his quest to become president again. Many have come to the same conclusion that if the DOJ doesn't put a period in the right place or even makes the slightest slip up, this could be huge for Donald Trump. And who knows, the old saying, even bad publicity is good publicity. In the coming years, we could see Trump in jail, or we could see him back in the White House. This is Eric Lecain here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJTV. Thank you so much for joining us today. Here's a name I have not heard in a while. Salman Rushdie. Some time ago, he was very much in the news for his book, The Satanic Verses. That book was released in 1988, in which he told a story that related to the god Muhammad. So the Muslim world called for his assassination, where they publicly burned his book, where people who helped translate the book or helped in its publishing were attacked or seriously hurt or even killed in some cases. In 1998, the head of the Iranian government came forward and said that he would not support or hinder the assassination of Rushdie. Supposedly, Salman gets a card every February 14th from Iran saying that they have not forgotten him and they still have a vow to kill him. That's become known as the unfunny Valentine. Well, this week, they almost got the job done. Salman had just got up on stage in New York to give a lecture when out of nowhere, a man rushed up on stage with a knife and started stabbing him. The man, whose name was Hadi Matar, was only 24 years old, which would make him born a whole decade before the Satanic Verses was even published. The police arrested him at the scene and have yet to understand the motive of why he attacked Rushdie. Supposedly the man stabbed him 15 times before they were able to separate them. The lucky part of this is that there was a doctor at the scene who rushed in to help. Rushdie was flown to the hospital where he underwent surgery and is expected to live. Currently, he is on a ventilator with damaged liver, multiple severed nerves in his arm, and most likely will lose an eye. I guess you could say that at least some God was looking down on him that day, because there was a sheriff at the scene who jumped in to make the arrest, separated him. Many are wondering why there was not more security, considering that Salman has a bounty on his head for $3 million. And that goes to anyone that kills him. There was about 2,500 people in the audience, and many of them thought that maybe this was part of the lecture, that it was staged as a kind of a protest somehow to show the violence of something or the other. Till, of course, blood started coming out of the neck of Rushdie. The UN Secretary expressed horror, said that the free expression and opinion should not be met with violence. The National Security Advisor of the U.S. White House also released a statement saying the attack was reprehensible and that the Biden administration wished him for a very quick recovery. Now, I'm sure many of you out there are wondering, what could someone write that is so bad that a country would want him assassinated and would burn his book? Which, by the way, burning the book made it a bestseller. Well, all we have to do is look at some of the traditions that the book addresses, and that, in essence, made the Muslim world furious at him. Many interpreted the book as portraying Islam as a deceitful, ignorant, and sexually deviant religion. The character in the book, Mahound, who appears in a dream, is somehow supposed to represent Muhammad. And that character was actually used in medieval Christian plays to represent satanic figures. So some Muslims concluded that Rushdie was trying to say that Muhammad was a false god. This led to people bombing bookshops that carried the book and bans from bringing the book into a Muslim country. Even the Ayatollah Khomeini, the supreme leader of Iran, issued a fatwa, which means Muslims should come together and find a way to kill Rushdie. This whole uproar even sparked a culture war in Great Britain, in which a huge part of the public said that the country should have the book legally banned from that country. Now, we didn't see Rushdie for a while because after the fatwa was announced, he went into hiding for almost a decade. But then he returned to public life, doing lectures and speeches. So as Salman Rushdie lay in a hospital bed, attached to a ventilator, we still wrestle with the concept of free speech. Should we be able to write or say anything we please, even if it's a fictional book about a very popular god? A book that is so controversial, you could be killed just for owning a copy of it? Sometimes religion can be a dangerous subject. So now I think I will stop talking about it. This is Eric Lecain here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJTV. There's a story that I keep hearing about in the Ukraine. Yes, I know. There is a war still going on there, and the Russians are still bombing the crap out of them. But the news this week is that one of the facilities that the Russians have recently taken, it's a nuclear power plant. It is the largest nuclear power plant of its kind in all of Europe. And many are worried about the damage that the Russians may have done to that plant. The Ukrainians say that they know that Russia is storing very heavy weaponry there because they know that the Ukrainians won't risk a nuclear disaster by shooting at the plant. The plant has 6 reactors, and even if they hit just one of them, it could conceivably cause a huge problem in that country. Now, of course, Russia is saying that the Ukrainians are purposely trying to blow up the site, claiming that they are nuclear terrorists. The other problem is that even though the Russians have taken the plant, actually the workers in the plant are still showing up to work every day because, a nuclear plant must be maintained. So there are ones that are really worried about things going on there on a daily basis. They said that, they burned up all the rooms and the offices, and other issues is that half the staff never came back. So, a lot of the safety protocols are not being maintained there. Meanwhile, shelling continues just outside the building. Some of the shells are coming just meters away from hitting the plant. Now, the United Nations has called on both sides to please stop fighting so close to the plant. The head of the Atomic Energy said that recent attacks had knocked out parts of the plant, risking unacceptable potential radiation leaks, and called for a team of experts to urgently be allowed to access the site where the situation has been deteriorating very rapidly. the Ukrainians say that the Russia has targeted a fire station right near the plant, which now adds another level of danger to the problem. Another issue is that workers there are not able to access certain parts of the plant that they need to. They can't tell if there's damage done to, what really might be, because the Russians will not allow them into certain areas of the plant. People with the plant who secretly give out information are saying that some parts of the plant are not even working anymore and that they are not allowed to fix any of the damaged areas. Now, Russian TV has stated that the plant has a constant damage due to the Ukrainians, and very soon they may have to mothball the whole thing, but they really gave no explanation on how or when this may happen. The Ukrainian news agency shows that Russia is firing missiles from the plant itself, and they have targeted a town called Nikopol, where 13 people were killed in shelling originating from the plant. This is the problem, that the Ukrainians can't return fire without the risk of hitting the plant or one of the reactors. There's a lot of worry in the surrounding areas for both the fact that the Russians are constantly shelling them and that there might be a nuclear disaster on the horizon as the war rages on there in the Ukraine. Goodness, this is Eric Lecain on The Jam. So, I was thumbing through some web pages about the Philippines when I came across the Wikipedia site titled 2022 Monkeypox Outbreak in the Philippines. I was like, oh my goodness, did I miss that there was an outbreak of monkeypox in the Philippines? And the answer is no. There is still only one confirmed case of monkeypox in the Philippines, which we already discussed back in July, and that person has since recovered. So even though some places like the US and the UK are having real and serious outbreaks, currently the Philippines, not so much. But here's something interesting. The World Health Organization is thinking about renaming the monkeypox virus. The reason? It could possibly be racist. Okay, so the term monkey could be considered not only a way to describe a primate, but also a term with racist connotations. This came after a meeting of the WHO scientists who had a discussion about the best practices for naming diseases. They want to avoid causing offense to any cultural, social, national, regional, professional, or ethnic groups, and to minimize any negative impact on the trade, travel, tourism, or animal welfare issues. Now, monkeypox was named in 1958 in Denmark when they discovered the pox-like lesions that they were forming on monkeys. Now, seeing that monkeys in general come from Africa or associated with Africa, yet most of the monkeypox cases are not actually in Africa, they thought it best to change the name so as not to associate the disease with Africa, even though for decades the virus was only found in Africa. Now, currently, according to the WHO, 98% of the cases of monkeypox are outside of Africa that are spread through male-to-male sex, which we have talked about before, which some people have already said that in itself is a stigma to gay men when we say it like that. However, of course, it's also just smart to know who's getting it so they can try and stop it before it spreads. But anyway, the WHO is asking the public to help them rename the monkeypox virus. By June of next year, they will choose the new name. I mean, the first thing that came to mind was, if you're going to start changing the name of monkeypox, what about chickenpox? Who's looking out for the chickens? Okay, in a related story, there's a new virus out there. Now, I know what you're saying. Eric, you report on a new virus every week. Okay, for the most part, it's a new variant of the COVID. That's what we report on. Or something that we have seen before, something that has resurfaced, such as monkeypox. But this week, there's something all new, and guess where it comes from? China. The current leader in the new scary diseases that you can catch, China. What's interesting about this new virus, they have discovered that it will go into the current category of viruses of diseases that you can catch from an animal. Now, it used to be that we really only thought of catching things like rabies from animals. But with the mainstream media bringing our attention to it now, it's now common knowledge that animals can give you a disease and then you can spread it to another human. The current new discovery in China is called Lecain virus. And it's already infected about 36 farmers and local residents. The culprit for the spread of this disease is not a rat, not a mouse, or a bat. It's a shrew. So in case you never grew up on a farm, these are little mole-like mammals that have very similar to rats. However, they have a very long and pointy nose. Now, no one has died yet from this new virus. However, scientists are worried because they believe that it's possible that there are many viruses like this that are passed from animal to human. We just don't know about it yet. And of course, the big concern is there could be another COVID out there that's being passed to humans. However, it hasn't mutated yet from the animal-type virus to the human-type virus. Now, many of these start out as only being passed from animal to human, and then that's the end. But as we have seen, once it becomes a human-to-human transmission, now that's where we have the big problem. So far, there's no evidence that anyone has caught Lecain virus from another human, only from a shrew. But as with all viruses, they adapt. And scientists are now looking at ways to handle that problem if that happened to arise. The actual first case of the virus was found in a 53-year-old farmer who visited the hospital with a fever, headache, cough, nausea back in 2018. Just seemed like a normal flu until they saw the readouts of the samples they took. They saw something that they had never seen before. It was something related to the Hendra or the Nipah viruses. Now, those viruses are extremely deadly, and they are clearly passed from animals to humans. So the investigation started over the next 32 months. 35 people across 3 hospitals came in with similar pathogens. Now, some were just generally sick, but some were very sick, a type of weird pneumonia. The other oddity is that some of the cases were of people living 700 kilometers from each other, which means it's not one selected area. And if it's not spread between family members or neighbors, then are the shrews in different parts of the country spreading this virus? Now, the idea of the shrew came up when investigators set traps for multiple types of animals, but it was the shrew that had the common animal that tested positive for this particular virus. But the question is how? How did the animal give it to the human? From a bite? From the human eating the animal? From its feces being spread near a food source, maybe? How, if the shrew, how is it passing it to the humans? That is the question, which leads us to yet another big story, which is coming out of Ghana, Africa. For the first time, the Marburg virus has been found in Ghana, and this past week, a young child, unfortunately, has died from it. This brings the total people who have died in Ghana to 3 from this deadly relative of the Ebola virus. Now, as it turns out, her mother also has the disease but is improving and is expected to survive. Marburg is actually transmitted via fruit bats, and then it can be spread from human to human via bodily fluids. Now, Marburg is not a brand new virus. It was originally discovered in 1967 in a European laboratory where people were studying green monkeys, and they contracted it from the monkeys. Then the medical people caring for those infected contracted it themselves. However, what's interesting is that this is in Ghana, a place where it's never been seen before. Now, the tricky part about this virus is that it permutates in bats. However, the bats themselves have no symptoms of the disease, so it's very hard to tell which ones are the carriers. Then they pass it to a monkey, and then the monkey passes it to the human. Then the human passes it, well, to each other. Now, this particular virus is not a virus you want to get. There is the usual nausea, vomiting, fever, sore throat, diarrhea. That's what you think. But this one also comes with jaundice, inflammation of the pancreas, delirium, shock, liver failure, massive hemorrhaging in the body, and eventually multi-organ failure. So as we start to get over COVID, what else do we have to worry about? It seems like animals are finally having their revenge on us for all those years of eating them. Anyway, just to be safe, stay away from shrews, bats, and monkeys. This is Eric Lecain here on the World News Jam on DZRJ 810 AM radio and RJTV, channel 224 on Sky Cable. So in entertainment news, it's a bit of a sad story. Anne Heck, who I think is a great actress. She was in movies like 6 Days, 7 Nights, Psycho, Donnie Brasco, John Q. She got a Primetime Emmy Award nomination for her work in Gracie's Choice. She was on that show Dancing with the Stars. She was in that movie Volcano with Tommy Lee Jones. And of course, we all remember her as the girlfriend of Ellen DeGeneres. That was big news when Heck left Ellen for a cameraman that she met on Ellen's comedy tour. What a scandal. Anyway, she was in a car wreck this week and ran into a house. The wreck was huge, started a massive fire. 59 firefighters rushed to the scene and spent 65 minutes putting out the fire. They couldn't get Heck out of the car for almost an hour. She was badly burned and suffered from a lack of oxygen. She had cocaine in her system, and that's what's believed to have led to this crash. When they put her in the ambulance, she was actually sitting up and almost fighting with the paramedics. But soon after, she lost consciousness. She went into a coma and had to be put on a ventilator. On August 11th, it was announced that she was indeed brain dead and would never wake up from her coma. Cause was an anoxic brain injury. Lack of oxygen to the brain. It was just too much. She's technically still alive because her heart is beating. However, state of California, she is legally dead. They're keeping her alive in order to donate her organs in line with what she wanted. Her family put out a statement that they had lost a bright light, a kind and most joyful soul. Robert De Niro wrote that, "I'm very sad to hear of the tragic passing of Anne Heck. She was a wonderful actress, and I enjoyed working with her tremendously in Wag the Dog. Sad, sad, sad." She was 53 years old. Another one of my favorite actress singers of all time was Olivia Newton-John. She passed away this week at 73 of breast cancer. She, of course, gave us the #1 hit Physical, which was #1 on the charts forever. Also, Hopelessly Devoted to You, Xanadu, I Love You, I Honestly Love You, Suddenly, Have You Ever Been Mellow, Summer Nights. I guess, some of these songs, they all come from that movie Grease, which I believe still the #1 grossing musical movie of all time. How I Remember Grease. I'm not sure how many times I saw that movie, but more than I'm willing to admit. I was even in a production of Grease one time. Not sure if I want to admit that, but I really loved Olivia, especially in that movie. Even later in life, she was a great advocate for animals and still performed even recently. In 2019, she was awarded the Companion of the Order of Australia, which is the country's highest honor. Even in January of 2021, she had released a new album entitled Window in the Wall. She will be forever missed and remembered. Olivia Newton-John passed away at the age of 73. Have you noticed that it's raining a lot lately? I mean, Manila floods on a regular basis. But doesn't it seem like a lot lately? Well, let's take a look at Korea. They haven't had this much rain since 1942, 18 inches of rain in one day. At one point, places it was 5.5 inches per hour. Everything was flooded as rivers overflowed, completely submerging the subways. Cars and buses completely abandoned, just left to float around the rivers like the streets that were the rivers now. Landslide warnings in 50 cities, workers trying to deal with the uprooted trees that were now floating down the streets. So far, 10 people have died, mostly in their own homes. 6 people are still missing. The president made a statement that the heavy rainfall is expected to continue for more days. He said that we need to maintain our sense of alert and response with an all-out effort. The military is prepared to deploy troops to help with the recovery efforts. There are multiple horrific scenes in the capital in Korea where 2 sisters that were both in their 40s and a 13-year-old girl, they called for help as they were stuck in their basement. But when the rescue workers got there was nothing they could do. The water rose so fast they couldn't get down into the basement, much less get them out before it was too late. Another man was trying to clear a tree and ended up being electrocuted from the fallen power lines. 3 other people died during a landslide where they were holed up in a bus station, the one place that they thought would be the safest place to go. Even in North Korea, which most of you would never hear of things like this, it's reporting that massive amounts of rainfall there. They are more worried about the crops and the damage done to the farmlands because, they're having enough problems there with food. Also, the main river that flows through the capital has completely flooded the whole area. They're currently working on ways to protect the buildings there. They need to protect those nuclear weapons that they're making. Now, many are always saying that this ridiculous amount of rain is directly tied to the recent changes in climate. In looking at these analyses, the ones that were done in the U.S. in which they took the yearly rainfall and divided it by the numbers of hours of rain, that's called the Rainfall Intensity Index. This index, which it's in 150 weather stations across the U.S., rose 90%. It shows the amount of rainfall over a period of the last 50 years has averaged 10% higher than before. Using the U.S. as an indicator shows a steady increase in intensity, especially in places like Texas and Nevada, where they're having 30 to 40% more intense rainfalls than ever before. Now, I can't give you the rainfall intensity index of North Korea, but suffice to say, it's been very hot this summer season, and that may be the main reason for this crazy rain. It just seems like every other week we're having some kind of record broken due to the heat or due to the rain. So I guess the question is, what's causing these strange weather patterns with is it our intense carbon emissions? Or is it just what the world feels like doing when it gets hot? It needs to dump buckets and buckets of rain on our head? Well, I guess we will continue to get wet. This is Lecain on the Jam on DZRJ. Some science news today. China has always had issues with how to get its massive population around its massive country. Its train system was very slow, with uncomfortable trains, and was not really a pleasurable ride. Basically, can you handle being on a China train for so many hours? Until now. In the past few years, China has changed its train system into one of the largest high-speed railway networks in the world, something like 37,900 kilometers of train track crisscrossing all over the country, and they did this all since 2008. Now, they have plans to make a total of 70,000 kilometers by 2035. So this week, they unveiled one of its newest accomplishments. Now, so far, the trains on the China's network can travel at speeds of up to 350 kilometers an hour. Now compare this with the European system, which can go around 250 kilometers per hour, or the U.S. system, which barely qualifies as high-speed train, which goes at 240 kilometers per hour. But now everything's going to be blown out of the water as far as trains that can blow things out of the water. The maglev bullet train is now a reality, which can reach speeds of 600 kilometers per hour. It will, without a doubt, be the fastest train on Earth. So why is it called maglev? Because it's based on the concept of magnetic levitation. The train appears to be floating on the tracks. It's an electromagnetic force that keeps the train levitated as it glides along the track. Besides, the extreme speed of this new concept emits low levels of noise and requires very little maintenance compared to other trains. The idea is to make a 3-hour transportation circle which docks with all the largest cities in China. They believe that this will reduce the time and expense for traveling around the country and will be a very pleasurable experience. Currently, the train system in place runs at 350 kilometers per hour, and airplanes there, they run at 800 to 900 kilometers per hour. So this train will find its way somewhere in the middle of that. But of course, the difference between you going on to an airport takes a lot of time to get in and out of the airport, in and off the plane. This will cut out that time in some ways, will make the train possibly faster than the airplane. Currently, there's only one of these types of trains working at the moment. It connects Shanghai's airport to the railway station in the city. The 30-kilometer journey takes about 7.5 minutes to complete, with the train going at 430 kph. Right now, China is in the process of building multiple new rail systems to get this train up to speed and zipping people around the country in a choo-choo like you have never seen before. In a related story, the new movie Bullet Train is the #1 movie in the world right now. Its gross take in its first few weeks was $77 million. This is the latest from actor Brad Pitt, who is an assassin who must battle other fellow assassins on the bullet train, which is actually in Japan. Sounds great, but even though the movie has made $77 million, for some reason it cost $90 million to make. Not sure if that's because of the special effects or Brad's salary, but the trailer looks pretty cool. So if I can ever get out of the house, I'm going to try and help Brad break even on his movie. Looks really great. In some animal news, there was a dog that was found. That doesn't seem like such a big story, but this dog has found its way onto every major news site around the world. First of all, the dog was lost for about 2 months. It was an old dog, so the owners assumed that, as would most of us, that the dog just wandered off and passed away. But this was not that. Turns out that a group of cave explorers, they are known as spelunkers. Yes, we learned a new word on the show today. They were exploring in one of the U.S.'s largest cave systems, about 21 miles long there in Missouri. Anyway, they had ventured down deep into the cave, about 500 feet below the surface, when they came across a dog curled up and laying in one of the openings. The dog was clearly not in good shape as it lifted up its head, but could not stand. So realizing that the dog may have fallen down in the area, well, then it couldn't get out, so they thought maybe they would have to rescue the dog. But how were they going to get the dog out? There was no way that the dog could climb up through the holes of the cave, and for sure they can't put down a rope. The dog can't hold on a rope, so they took a picture and they went in search of the owner, which they found. The owner couldn't believe that the dog was even still alive, seeing it disappeared on June 9th. So they called the local fire chief and went back to check on the dog, who was named Abby. When they got to her, it was evident that she probably had been there the whole time and was malnourished and so weak couldn't even stand. Making the climb out of the extremely windy conditions and cold and wet and slippery surface of the cave was out of the question. So how to get the dog out of the cave? They put her in a duffel bag with a towel. She just walked in the bag and laid down, knowing that they were trying to help her. So what they did was they created a chain and just handed the dog from person to person, and then they would move up the cave and then repeat the whole thing again. And they did it again and again until they finally got the dog out of the cave. Once they got out of the cave, she was actually blind for a little while from being in the darkness for 2 months. But the dog is expected to make a full recovery. The group of cave explorers who were there to do a project to make a report on the cave now has a different story to tell. Something completely different. It became a rescue of a good old dog named Abby. And, well, it's a good story to tell. Sometimes it's just nice to hear a story about spelunkers saving a dog. This is Eric Lecain on the World News Jam on DZRJ. All right, let's get to our crimes of the week. Such a great segment. A Mexican woman decided one night to look through her husband's phone. Now, that, of course, can never be good. On the phone, she found pictures of him having sex with a woman. She threw down the phone in a jealous rage and ran into the kitchen and got a knife. She found her cheating husband and began stabbing him with the knife. After getting in some good stabs, he finally wrestled her to the ground, was able to get her to drop the knife, but not before receiving multiple stabs, wounds on his arms and legs. After he found out why she was stabbing him, it was all because of the picture she found of him having sex with another woman. He explained that the woman in the picture was actually her. He was searching through some old email and found the picture, the two of them, then transferred it to his phone so that he could look at it every time he was feeling lonely. She didn't seem to recognize herself because the pictures were taken when she was much younger and thinner and used to wear lots of makeup. She was arrested and remains behind bars pending charges. So if you come across photos of a naked girl on your husband's phone having sex with another woman, try asking him first before trying to murder him. I'm sure there will always be a good explanation. In another interesting crime story, this happened in Lebanon when a man went into the bank to withdraw some money. He needed the money for hospital bills for a member of the family. Now, the man had $210,000 in the bank, so the money was not the problem. The problem was that Lebanon is currently in a financial crisis right now, and the new rules have been put in place to stop people from taking their money out of the banks. The man tried to explain that he needed $5,000 for medical bills. However, the bank was like, "Sorry, sir, you cannot take that much out of the bank at this time. Please read our new policies." So the man became enraged, came back, poured gasoline on the floor, and pointed a rifle at them and demanded that they turn over his money. Just to be clear, he's not stealing. He's just withdrawing his own money. Anyway, he took hostages, and a standoff lasted with police for 6 hours. Eventually, the bank agreed to give him $35,000 of his own money if he would just walk out peacefully. So, as the man walked out of the bank, escorted by the police, the crowd outside cheered, "You are a hero," and chanted, "Down with the rules of banks." In a related story, there was another incident back in January in which a man wanted to take out his money from a Lebanon bank in U.S. dollars because, of course, currently Lebanese money has lost 90% of its value. When the bank refused, he also took multiple hostages, had a standoff with police, but eventually they talked him down too, just gave him his money. The problem, I said, is like, there's a financial crisis there. Rules have been put in place, especially about sending U.S. dollars overseas to another bank. They are worried in Lebanon that if you given the choice, everyone would take their money out of the banks and would collapse the economy. So in any case, currently, it's the best way, it seems, to get your cash out of the bank in Lebanon is to rob it, basically stealing money from yourself. So, in the last crime of the week, it involves a mother and her 5 children, and they want to get a home to live in Las Vegas. She was currently homeless and living in a residential hotel. Now, she's looking for cheap Section 8 housing, which means that she could get a house and the government would pay part of her rent if the house she picked was part of the government program. Now, these houses are not hard to come by, are very hard to come by, so she was very lucky to find one through a realtor. However, with this particular realtor, there was a catch. The property manager / broker / realtor asked her to sign a contract in order to get that particular house. The contract stated that the woman must have sex with the property manager whenever he asks her. The title of the contract read, Direct Consent for Sexual Intercourse. It was written just like any other very legal contract. It said, please read this legal contract very carefully. First off, it said that she had to swear that she was signing it, not that she was not signing it under the influence of a incapacitating intoxicant or aphrodisiac or psychoactive substance, including but not limited to alcohol, drugs, oysters, bremilotide, truffles, sea cucumber, strawberries, lobsters, dark chocolate, cocaine, LSD, cannabis, or any other mind-altering chemical or substance, nor have any of these been given by the initiator. Honestly, I never knew that sea cucumbers, strawberries, or lobsters can make you incapacitated. Guess I learn something new every day. The contract goes on. The tenant hereafter swears that she does not currently have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a parent who is larger, meaner, or more physically aggressive, owns a firearm, or is more possessive than the initiator. It goes on and on. But anyway, she was told that if she didn't sign the contract, she would not get the house. Now, of course, she took the contract to the police, and now just this week they finished up in court. The court had some issues with this case because there was currently no precedence for something like this. I mean, was it extortion? Was it a violation of the Fair Housing Act? Coercion under duress? Well, it turns out the broker listed his fake address on his real estate license, so he will lose his license. And also the court fined him $94,000 because of a whole list of things, including sexual advances when the woman came to sign the housing documents. So anyway, if you're going to try and get a woman to have sex with you in order to rent cheap housing, do not make a legal binding contract because most likely it will get read out loud in court. Maybe just take her out to dinner or something. This is Eric Lecain here on the World News Jam. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We will be back next week with more of the most interesting stories of the week. So please join us right here on DZRJ and RJTV. Everyone stay safe out there, and we will see you next week.